Alright, people, alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafa. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا وانين لايتم bienvenidos a todos بخير راغله خوش آمدید. And as always, people, swagatam. Alright, so what is going on? Kind of feel that some reason being knocked a little, but anyway. Alright, so what is going on? Is it just me or is that... Let me see. I don't know. Well, it can sort itself out. Alright, so people, what is going on? What is going on? So, boy, as always, what a day, what a day. Ya salam. So, let me first just do a quick sound check as always. Just make sure it's going, the sound's coming across all good, people. Alright, saludos, compa, ¿qué tal? Daniel, hermano, what is going on? Salam, Mufti, Ghori. Alright, Loji, Ghori aaya. I take it you guys can hear me, Abu Safura, tuning in from Dhaka. Alright, you're doing it. Let me just check my Facebook as well, that they can hear me all fine. Yeah, whilst that's going on, let me, as a true vampire, resort to some blood. Alright. Nothing quite like the taste of blood, huh? So, what is going on? People. Alright, Arizona, la tierra caliente. Alright. Happy birthday for Rahisa. She's 21. Who is... Yeah, Rahisa kone. What's going on, people? Alright, Facebook, Frowdy Frubbery, Henna, Ayub, Claire, you're all doing it. Right, so, what is going down? What are we looking at? Zeba, you're doing it. Inaya, as always, see the people online. Wah. So, what is preoccupying the precious minds of mi gente? Alright, so, whilst people are tuning in, clicking like, clicking shares, always spreading the fitan and fasad. Right, so, as always, let's take a look at some interesting... whilst people do that, hey, well, let's go to a poem. Allahu Akbar. I should have that here.
जितने अपने थे,
Hi.
सब पराये थे.
Wah.
जितने अपने थे, सब पराये थे. हम हवा को गले लगाए थे. हवा को गले लगाए थे. जितनी कसमें थीं, सब थी शर्मिंदा. जितने वादे थे सर झुकाए थे. जितने आंसू थे सब थे बेगाने. जितने मेहमान थे बिन बुलाए थे. सब किताबें पढ़ाई थी. सारे किस्से सुनाए थे. एक बंजर जमी के सीने में मैंने कुछ आसमां उगाए थे. सिर्फ 2 घूंट प्यास की खातिर उम्र भर धूप में नहाए थे, हाशिए पर खड़े हुए हैं हम, हाशिए पर खड़े हुए हैं हम, हमने खुद हाशिए बनाए थे.
Hi, 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 hi. Fa, 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 fa. That's some poetry to get us into the mood. Alright, people. Stefan, you're doing it with the super chat. Much love, much love. So, what's going down? Right, so first of all, politics, huh? Alright, so Biden is in and Trump is out. Va, 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 va. That's life, huh? That is the way politics works. हमने पल पल में तख्तों को बदलते देखा. Hi, 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 hi. See, he says how we've seen the seat of power flip like where's our guy, where's our
एकदम इन्होंने वक्त बदल दिया, जज्बात बदल दिए, जिंदगी बदल.
So that's how the seat of power has flipped. Ya salam. Ya salam. So what is going on around the world, people? Well, I thought I'd share this with you. This is something interesting. So Saudi Arabia rejects the Pakistani ambassador due to his name. Right, so as you can see, his name is Akbar Zab. So Akbar Zab. So that in Arabic is is a bit nutty, you know. So Akbar means obviously the greatest, and then he's saying the greatest, and Zab, as many of you are already familiar, is the male genitalia. So so that's what he is. He's the greatest. Beep. They must be looking at that like, is this guy taking the that's like somebody almost having the name Ban Beep and wanting to work as a diplomat in Pakistan or India. You'd be like, acha, cha, cha. Anyway, other than that, if you haven't already caught up with my from last week, the Masala segment, well, you can do so to our beloved Cupcake Chaudhary Saab. That's also out there on YouTube. Right, so other than that, people, what is going down? Well, there's the announcement for the vaccine. Yeah. I don't know what people's thoughts are about that. You see, because I kind of feel that if there was a vaccine right now, the way I see it is, what's the point? I mean, for me, what's the point? Because I'm more than certain I've already had coronavirus, so I can't be bothered to take their vaccine. God knows what they've rushed into that job. You don't know what kind of problems we'll be facing 5 years from today, and they'll be like, well, sorry, sorry. So yeah, I'm not an anti-vax kind of person. I'm not one of those that believes that vaccinations are some kind of great conspiracy, but I do feel this vaccine is a bit rushed. What is it? Pfizer have announced Pfizer doing it that it's 90% successful. TK, 90%. Is that the same stats for their Viagra, or is that a 90% stat as well? I'm not quite I'll have to Google that one. They go, yar, take this. If this doesn't work, at least our blue pill works. Well, it's good to know that it's a name you can trust, huh? There you go, it's a household name. Don't worry about it. Faiza, we're here. So, right, so what's going on, people? I will be looking at, a little later on, I want to talk about Sheikh Umar Sulaiman, Jinn possession. Ooh. So he had this clip circulating, and it's not, it's not that it's just Sheikh Umar Sulaiman pushing this kind of superstitious hocus pocus nonsense. But many people are doing it, but the fact that he's also kind of jumped on the bandwagon, got a very popular clip going viral. So I thought, well, chalo, it's a good opportunity to clarify for people that there's no such thing as this nonsense in Islam. I did last week clarify about the evil eye, and I thought, well, there's some kind of a follow-up, if you like. Jinn possession, it doesn't exist, but I'll do that a little later on. We'll cover that, go through the evidences. Obviously, they don't have any evidences for it. But they have some weak hadith, and they misuse 1-2 verses of the Quran. Chalta hai yaar. For a big industry, cha-ching, multi-million-dollar industry around the world of of exorcisms. So obviously, it's natural to misuse 1 or 2 verses of the Quran. Chalta hai yaar, chalta. So I'll clarify that. In addition to that, I did want to address as well, I've been sent a clip of Sheikh Hassan Katani. Hassan Katani. So, where he's making his controversial remarks of anti-blackness, and so I want to discuss a bit of that as well, and the problems that exist and how to tackle them. This kind of anti-blackness when it appears in history, and then the position of religious people today about it, because there's a ridiculous stubbornness to refuse to, people justify this kind of anti-blackness as well. So I want to mention that. Other than that, take some of your questions. Nabil goes, just, I think for the record, he's clarifying that jinn possession does exist. Okay. Mufti, is it okay to marry? Oh no, sorry, bhaiya. Is it okay to marry two closet bi-lesbians? Wah. For that, a person has to. That's the like 2 closet bi. This is the reaction. Wah. So, why not, huh? Why not? Buy and just, there's the law, the law in all directions. I think that's the every guy's fantasy. So, according to Islam, Malcolm X says, I've given a super chat. What, this one, man? Malcolm X has given a super chat. Can the matan be munkar sanad sahih? Can the matan be munkar sanad sahih? Acha. So basically, what he's asking is, can a hadith come to us with a valid chain, what scholars call valid, and the text of it be ridiculous? Of course, countless examples, like, but then you'll find problems in the chain as well. But I take it what you mean is that author has validated the chain, like Bukhari. So the fact that the Prophet married a child is an absurd mutton. That's nonsense. And there's many. You can watch my Bukhari Gate. I go through many examples. I'm sure all of those hadith that I go through, according to your standards, presumably are the sanad is okay, because Bukhari is rubber stamping it, apparently or allegedly, or whether it's Bukhari or more likely Frabri. Maybe the students of Frabri, and maybe the people who come after him. God knows who it is. People have no idea. It's just this project that they've all kind of you see, the issue is, let me clarify, this is it's worth saying a few words on. Why were people not as critical of hadith, of documented hadith during the early few centuries of Islam? And the reason is that in early Islam, there was a competition, if you like, a rivalry to claim orthodoxy. Who are the true orthodox Muslims? So you have to remember, for maybe 200-300 years of Islam, around between the 200 to 300 years, definitely the Salaf, so the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, the Atba'u Tabi'een, people like Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, during their time, there was no creed. So Imam Malik will never tell you what to believe. I mean, he might mention an odd point, like he might say, oh, we don't believe what they believe, but he doesn't have a list of beliefs. Neither does Abu Hanifa, neither the Salaf didn't have that. So they don't have this dogma. Some people may in that time be developing dogma, but they don't have it institutionalized. There isn't so they can't say, well, here is a book of what to believe about God. They don't have that. Whereas they do have thousands and thousands of documents and proto books on how to practice Islam. So Imam Malik has from him 100,000 issues documented, fatwa, but yet he'll never teach you how to believe. So there's this kind of rivalry that who are the real representatives of the Prophet? And many people are competing in this. So what happens is you start to get certain people who preoccupy themselves with hadith studies. This is the early... So these are the first kind of major generations of muhaddithin. They are the kind of proto-Sunnis, the early Sunnis, so to speak. So what happens is they are earning themselves an identity by associating themselves with hadith. So hence, when Ahlul Hadith was used in early Islam, this is what it was referring to, the proto-Sunnis. Because the word Sunni hadn't emerged. There was no word. So Imam Malik would never have said, I'm a Sunni. Because the word Ahl Sunnah didn't exist the way it exists later on, or it exists today. So today, people will say, are you Shia? Are you from the Sunnah? Are you Sunni? In that day and age, this word Ahl Sunnah hadn't existed yet. It hadn't emerged. So to them, Sunnah meant the way, but there wasn't this group called Ahl Sunnah. So how do you define them? So they're all doing their own kind of way, but what seems to loosely appear is this affiliation with hadith seems to reflect orthodoxy. So this is really important in understanding why later, so when the second wave of muhaddithin appear, these groups like Bukhari and people like Bukhari and Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud and Ahmad, and all these people are appearing on the scene. And Bayhaqi and Darqutni and all these this group from the 200 Hijri going into the early 300s. This group of muhaddithin, they are, you see, because their identity is so tied into hadith, the existence of hadith. So for hadith to exist, supports, validates their identity as Orthodox Muslims. So they can't be as critical. Like, they can be critical, but they're not going to be overly critical of too many hadith. Like, they can be critical of the craft. Like, they can say, well, you know, this rawi, I disagree with this rawi narrator, I disagree with that narrator. But they can't start just problematizing so many actual hadith, the way Imam Malik did a bit earlier on. But even Imam Malik, he criticizes them, but not, he doesn't always go about criticizing. He'll criticize the odd one. So they can't do it because it jeopardizes their own project. They're too invested. And that is always important to remember when you ask these questions like, you know, why is the chain sahih then? Why didn't they criticize the matan? Because they're too invested. They can't do it. It's like today, let's say you've got Sufis today, the kind of people who follow tasawwuf tariqas. They know that this is actually a bid'ah hasana. It is what they call, a bid'ah hasana. It is an innovation in Islam. It didn't exist in the time of the Prophet. They're not stupid. I mean, maybe the odd one might be so deluded he doesn't know that. But most of their scholars know that this is an innovation in Islam. Even if they believe it's a good innovation, but why won't they acknowledge that publicly? The odd person might acknowledge it, but most of them will try to blend it as though it's some kind of a sunnah, even though they know that it's not a sunnah. They know that this is an innovation. Or going to shrines or having graves as, you know, like these huge mausoleums, and having these, you know, darbars and dodgy peer sabs and all this stuff. Why don't they overly criticize them, even though they know these things are not from Sunnah? Because they're invested in that same project. You see, now it's difficult being very critical of that when you're a part of that greater scheme, because then inadvertently you're kind of opening the door for people to criticize you. So yeah, so you must remember that. I hope that makes some sense. Right, so what is going on? Mufti Saab, please suggest. I don't know what the hell you're on about. Right, so how about Fiqh al-Akbar by Imam Abu Hanifa? Fiqh al-Akbar isn't by Imam Abu Hanifa. Who on earth said Fiqh al-Akbar is by Imam Abu Hanifa? What they're claiming, and they're wrong, but they're claiming that these are the beliefs held by him, backtracking, as in where they're back projecting. It's actually by, I think, Khwarizmi or someone, the actual Fiqh al-Akbar. There's a debate on who it actually belongs to, but it's, you know, hundreds of years or a couple of hundred years after Imam Abu Hanifa. There's no way that Imam Abu Hanifa would have written about Aqidah, because Aqidah did not exist as a dogma. So that in itself will tell you that this is a lie. Why did you say Jesus will not come back? Why did you say it? What would be Rock Black? You're doing it with the super chat. Much love, much love. Right. What would be your 3 main topics if you were to choose as our caliph? What? What is the question? What would be your 3 main topics if we would choose you as our caliph? Would you even accept this position? Hell no, I wouldn't accept that position. Look, there are no caliphs in Islam. This is a political thing. A caliph understanding it simply means a dynast, a king in Islam. Islam did not introduce any kingships, but it recognized that it kind of left it to people. If they want a democracy, if they want a monarchy, if they want a dynasty, it's all open. It didn't really go down that track in trying to advise people how to rule. So there's no such thing. There are no all these hadith to do with a khilafah are all made up. There isn't a single. There would never be an authentic hadith about a khilafah, right? Because this word did not even exist in the Prophet's time to mean what it means as a khilafah. The Arabic word khilafah existed, but it didn't mean this, right? It would have meant something that comes at the end of something. It would have been a regular Arabic word, but not meaning this. So, and I've spoken about this in the past. It's like saying the word mobile existed, but today in the UK and in other parts it means a mobile phone. But it wouldn't have meant this if 40 years ago. So even though the English word existed, but today it means something else. So yeah. Mufti Dawah man rapping. Yeah, I've seen some clip about Dawah man. Right, actually, you know what? Remind me. I think we should say a few words about Dawah man's video. Yeah, I should have actually. I did intend on getting that cut out, but I didn't manage to. Yeah, he's made some video where he's discussing deviance and things, and we'll come back to that later on. So, Cupcake, where are you? Oh, Cupcake. So, what is going on? Mufti, what are your thoughts on Raqis? I'm going to go over that when I speak about Sheikh Umar Sulaiman. And I'll speak about Raqis. Why do you post clips of Maulana Zamir Akhtar Naqvi on your IG stories? Ali Mahdi is saying. And this is who he's talking about. This is the clip. I find him very amusing. That's it, really. I think I just post this meme of his every now and then. I don't really post clips of his. Right, Mufti Saab, can you talk about Saqifa? I think we'll talk about Saqifa another day. I have spoken about Saqifa in the past, about Daru Bani Sa'ida, about the Saqifa is choosing a caliph after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so who was the teacher of Imam Malik? Zeba saying, Mufti Ji, were you charged for having tea with a friend? There was an article about in Birmingham, some person had got stopped by the police and charged for having tea with a friend during lockdown. He wasn't actually having tea, but the article, I think it explains that was what he said to the officer, because they asked him where he's going and he said, I'm going to well, he definitely had a screw loose. I mean, is that the best excuse he can come up with, for God's sake? You gotta dazzle the system, people. You gotta dazzle it. So you can't say I'm going to have a cup of tea. That's taking the mick. They're gonna be like, acha, 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 acha. Zara, इसको भी कल्टी कर दो. You can't say stuff like that. You can't say I'm going to have tea. You gotta be sharper than that, people. You gotta know how to work the system. It is all a system, isn't it? If you think about it. I don't know. I think this whole lockdown thing is doing my head in. Yeah. Mufti, what are your thoughts on Ibn Hazm? I love Ibn Hazm. I'm going to quote him a little later on. I've got his book right here, Al-Fasl or Al-Fisl fil Milal wa Nihal. Some Hussein said, I saw you at Alam Rock restaurant eating a lamb chop like a posh boy. Rather. Well, one must indulge. You know, I was speaking about this earlier on today with I was speaking about desire. People are going to think, yeah, what's Mufti on about now? But you see, in psychology, there is a distinction between liking something and desiring it. And I don't just mean a phenomenological difference. I mean, there are biological differences. So, and I've spoken of this in the past about it's the dopaminergic drives within the brain, the pathways that represent desire. But liking something is different. It's a whole, it's stimulation of different aspects of the brain. So a lot of these things can go hand in hand. So you can, but sometimes they don't need to. So sometimes you can like something, but not have a desire for it. And you also see this sometimes when things go wrong as well. I don't know whether it's necessarily but you do get with certain people, they may have suffered something, an injury, or they've had some damage, and then they may lose their sexual appetite. So there's cases where this happens. But if they did engage in sex, they still enjoy it. It's not that they don't enjoy it. But that's where sometimes some damage has happened to them. But even generally, you will find, and there's been experiments where, let's say, rats or mice they've had certain regions activated in their brain to every time they receive a shock, an electric shock, it would trigger those dopaminergic kind of pathways. Now, they would then have such a desire to keep, even though they do not want the shock. It's not that they want the shock, but they would do that till they exhaust themselves. And this field explains the psychology of addiction, how it works, because when you when the desire for something is really powerful, but the reward, the liking of it is also amplified, it can lead to, in many people, addictions. It doesn't have to lead to addictions, but it can in certain people. So, right. So, okay. So what I was discussing was, you see, I don't have I don't have much of a desire for things like food. As dumb as that sounds. Obviously, I have the instinctual response. So, obviously, if I'm hungry, I want to eat. And I have the liking. See, liking is not the same as desiring. So, I will like certain foods. So, if I eat them, I like them. And if I had a choice, I would choose the ones that I like. But I don't have a desire. Like, let's say I'm not hungry. I'm not driven for food at all. Like, I mean, zero, like literally. So I don't understand, like people, let's say invitations for food, they literally, it means zero to me. Like, it doesn't incentivize me in the slightest. So we were having this discussion today about this. I know that that's probably really weird because it makes sense to be incentivized for food because of the whole evolutionary thing. But so I wonder if other people are like that, or is that just me? I don't. Have something gone wrong in my childhood? I was thinking, you know what it might have been was I was discussing this earlier on. I was thinking it may have, but it may completely not. But when we were kids, we were told that, oh, you're not allowed to, like, if you go out, you're not allowed to eat food at people's homes, or you're not, if people offer you something, you can't take it. And if they, let's say you go to a relative's house or you go somewhere, if they give you food and say, oh, have this, you can't have it because it's a sign that you desi upbringings, right? Oh, it means that, oh, your parents don't feed you. So there's this thing that this is obviously old school now, but so as kids, not that we used to go that much, but if we did, we weren't allowed to kind of like eat the food that other people would give us when we were guests. So I was thinking, maybe did it have a link with that, or was it just biological anyway in my brain, or I don't know. But anyway, there you go, sharing something totally weird about myself. Um, so yeah, so I wonder how that is with other people. But it's just food, really, nothing. I think the other departments have overstepped. But I feel, yeah, so I wonder how that is with other people. But anyway, moving back to um um sign of being naughty. It could be. This probably explains my other why I'm messed up in other ways. But yeah. Mufti, how about drink? Yeah, I don't think drink works evolutionarily the same way as food works. Um, I think you obviously just have thirst and you want to drink water, but I think food, because of the variety of food historically, whether it's meat or plants or things like this, I think it just worked differently on the brain. But yeah, let's move on. Mufti, my bro places the Hadith on the same level as the Quran. Inaya said, "Yeah, that is wrong. It's not, and it is quite absurd, really, when you think about it. That people, the way they take a single isolated narration. Just think about it. Like if I told you something that I witnessed something, and one person told me that they witnessed it. So that person witnessed it. They told me, and I'm telling you, and nobody else in the world is telling you about that incident. Nobody. Like you don't see it on social media, you don't see it on other things. Would you be so quick to accept it? It doesn't mean you need to think I'm lying, because it's not black and white. Not everything is you are either telling the truth or you are either a liar, pathological liar. There's many stages in between. People can make mistakes sometimes. They can misinterpret data. They can misinform. They can misexpress. There's false memories. There's so many things. But you would be reserved and reticent in accepting that to be authentic if only one person from one person told you and you don't hear it anywhere else on social media or in the world. So hadith is a very similar thing. Right, okay. Hassan G, you're doing it. You're doing it. हासिल कुन है ये जहान खराब बस यही मुमकिन था इतनी उछलत में. That is fascinating discussion. That's actually a poem of Jaun Elia. I did make a very quick, I did it quickly. It just occurred to me the other night. I saw something on YouTube and it came up that, it was the death anniversary of Jaun Elia. So I made this quick tribute to him. I put it on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. I could just read out some of his poems, and what I did is I translated them in English on the pictures, so you can. It's got the Urdu in writing, but I put the English translation there for people, and it's only like a 5-minute clip. Um, but this is one of his amazing poems as well. That Hasile kun hai ye jahan kharab. Hasil is the result of kun fayakun, the command of Allah. That the result of the command be is this cosmos. But he says this, and he says has ye jahan kharab, that this, wretched, or maybe not wretched, but this ruin, kind of cosmos and creation existence is a result of this be. And he says, bas yehi mumkin tha itni ujlat mein. That he's saying, I guess, well, if you're going to do it in such a hurry, then that's all that's going to be possible. You need to kind of take your time, I guess. And he's saying it in a way challenging a notion, but it leans in on a greater philosophical discussion that is this the best of all possible worlds? Could God have created a world much better than this? And I discussed that in my last mind trap. I didn't do a mind trap this last week, actually. It's just been I don't know, it just been I don't know what and where I'd been, but yeah, but I will be this week. I'm looking to possibly do maybe 2 mind traps. I hopefully one tomorrow with the Sheikh Kashif from Australia. That should be interesting on things like gender interactions and stuff like that. But also possibly one later on in the week with a motivational speaker. So do look out for that. But coming back to, on my last mind trap, I did discuss with Dr. Maruf Shah this proposition, because this is what Imam Ghazali said. Imam Ghazali, he wrote that laysa fil imkan abda'u mimma kan, that this is the best of all possible worlds, that God could not have made a better world, even if he wanted to. And as you can imagine, it triggered an immense, bleep storm, because people really flipped, including the great Maliki legend Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, who was his student. And he says that this is something that really triggered me, and I can't believe he said such an abomination. His words, he uses harsh words against Ghazali for this statement. But I mean, to me, this is not the best of all possible worlds, but it is what it is. So, yeah. Let's see, where have these chats got to? What are your views on Jaffari Fiqh? Jaffari Fiqh is the Shia Fiqh of the Twelvers. Mufti, can you bring Bro Hajji? I have asked Bro Hajji, and he's preoccupied. He said, obviously he makes his own videos, but it would be good to get him on. He did say to me, look, if I do free up, sure. What is a day in Mufti's life? How does it look like? Chaos. It looks like staring into an abyss. Allah, Allah, Allah. And the abyss staring right back at you. Sometimes I just feel like, honestly, I feel like I'm just free falling in life. And I don't know, it's like time, space. I just I don't know what is going on in this in this mind. Allahu a'lam. But yeah, that's what a day in my life looks like. As to the other things, then yeah, they are what they are. But I tell you, there's very I have no routine, and my only constant is chaos. and that seems to be a reality in my life. It is what it is, people. Oh right, I didn't answer the other question. What are my views on Jaffari fiqh? Yeah, Jaffari fiqh. I haven't really studied Jaffari fiqh, Shia fiqh. I mean, fiqh is fiqh. I don't really think it's radically different from Sunni fiqh. I think maybe on some issues, but otherwise, for the most part, fiqh is how you pray and how you do stuff. And so there's going to be certain differences that they'll have, but I don't think it's going to be radically different overall for the most parts, broadly speaking, that is. Yeah. But I haven't studied it, so I can't really be too, I can't really critique it so well. I've come across, okay, not come across. When we were studying, we were taught several things from Jaffari fiqh, but they were just like made to be very like really crazy wacko stuff. Like, can you believe in Jaffari fiqh? They say this, they say this, but I don't like. I doubt whether what we were taught was accurate. Like, it may have just been hyperbolic, or it may have been fatawa, but not real. Do you understand? So it's like when people misrepresent, it could have been misrepresented. It could have been true as well. I don't know, but I wouldn't really consider that learning that we did occasionally where they would mention Jafri fiqh as being something what I would rely upon. Yeah. Islam is all about brainwashing, so Mufti is not technically doing anything wrong. Right, so no, I mean, Islam is not about brainwashing. Somebody said, does your tea not get, this is almost done. It's still lukewarm. Chalega, yaar, chalega. So, and PG tips or Yorkshire tea, both. I do actually like, I think, generally, Earl Grey does rather English breakfast as well, but Earl Grey. They became preoccupied with Mufti. I don't know who you're talking about. Sakir Romana is asking. I don't know what that means. Sure. Let's take a look at some. All right, there's a super chat. I suppose I have to answer a super chat. People will be like, "Yeah, Mufti, we just did a super chat." Daniel Ramirez. All right, ¿qué tal? All right, Mufti is the istidkar. Is that the istidkar on your shelf here? Can you see it right there? Let me check. Yep, that's it right there. The istidkar of Ibn Abdul Bar. Do you prefer certain publishing houses over others? Does it really matter which publishing houses we get our books from? That's a good question. I don't think it really matters like that. I think, if I recall correctly, it's just Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya, isn't it? I believe so. Which is notorious sometimes, or it has a notorious reputation. I don't know whether it is always notorious, but sometimes they do have mistakes in there. They might mistype words. There are some typos and things. It's not, I don't think it's overwhelming, but you may find occasional mistakes. It does happen. And I think with some more than others. So Dar al Kutub al Ilmiya, has this reputation for having typos. Dar al Gharb is actually really good for Maliki stuff. Um, they had an amazing reputation at one point. Najibwe were meant to be really good as well for their editing and stuff like that. But I don't know, you see, because then there's a lot of other kind of claims. Some people claim that with Najibwe there was a huge scam going on as well, where he was ripping off the works of other people, publishing them as his own. That's great, huh? Just making. So I don't know. Then you've got those ethical questions. Yeah, but Darul Gharb, I do really like. You can see some. I think you can probably see some Darul Gharb. I don't know if you can see that over there. They usually have that kind of print, but I've got quite a few on the top shelf that are by Darul Gharb. They are, in fact, this behind me is Darul Gharb. So they usually have a very similar design. I do like their stuff. But yeah, I don't think, to be honest, to me, it's not a huge deal. But I do accept that some do have mistakes, and some publishing houses more than others, like Darul Kutub al Ilmiya. Right, Lonzetta, you're doing it with the super chat. Much love. You said, Salam Mufti, is Kashif Khan the only reasonable Salafi that you know? You both seem to be in the same mindset despite your differences in fiqh. He is a Salafi in the sense he's Ahlul Hadith, but he seems to be from that reason. It's weird because the Ahlul Hadith of India, and this is not really the Salafis of Saudi or the Gulf, but the Ahlul Hadith in India, they generally were kind of fanatics. They have this kind of this air of being really fanatic and stuff. But amongst them, you had a kind of like a microcosm. You had this micro bubble within them, or this like a strand, which was a purely intellectual tradition. It's weird, really. The Ahlul Hadith of India are really strange. You have some amongst them that are incredibly reason based. And it's surprising how they are then Ahlul Hadith. But you see, I've got a theory on that. I was just thinking if. No. Right, so I've got a theory on that, and I think that is because they didn't have anything else to, because the only dominant madhab is the Hanafi madhab, and there's no point being Hanafi, so you're better off being Salafi, because what else would you be if you lived in a place like Pakistan, for example? You can't just become Maliki or something out of the blue, because remember, you would have no Maliki books, you would have no Maliki resources, you would have nothing. So the best thing is just to deny all taqleed and then maybe do your own thing. So, like you get Maulana Abdul Karim al Athari, his teacher, Sheikh Inayatullah Shah Gujarati or Wazirabadi, you do get, so there is this thing. And Sheikh Kashif Khan is also a very reason based kind of Ahlul Hadith scholar. I suppose in many ways, people like Sheikh Akram Nadwi are like that as well. Alright, you're doing it, you're doing it. Let me just. Crazy midget. That can't really be your the username, is it? Crazy midget. But yeah, alright. Much love for the super chat. You're doing it. What's this? Farid. Sheikh Asrar. No, these are just um These are just troll accounts. You've got Farid responds on here, and he says, Khaja mere Khaja, I do. And Colin Turner says, Yo, Malm, read me chat. Oh, yo, Malm, read me chat. Oh, Crazy Midget asks, did Ibn Hajar advocate mawlid? Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, I don't think he did, but maybe Ibn Hajar al-Haythami or Ibn Hajar al-Makki, maybe they did. I don't think Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani was so against it, but I don't think he was so in favor of it either. Alright, we got critical rationalism. Much love for the super chat. You're doing it, you're doing it. You said, what is your take on the word alameen? I believe that the scope of the word can be changed. For Allah, the word can encompass universe. Meanwhile, for the Prophet, the word could mean the Arabian Peninsula. Sure, I mean, yeah, I mean, like when you say rahmatan lil alameen, I think, though, that's a very narrow interpretation. I think people would have understood it to mean that you are a rahma lil alameen, as in for everyone, but if only they truly understood. So people, but even really when we look at this world for the most part, where we have arrived, I don't know, had of certain things not happened in history, then how would the world today be? I don't, we don't know. We can only hypothesize. But Islam has, for the most part, been a great blessing for the world, whether people agree with it or not. But it changed the course of human history. The European scientific revolution only existed or was triggered by the Arabic and the Middle Eastern tradition, which was a direct result of Islam. So much of the world as we know it today, much of the scientific revolution, much of medicine, much of philosophy, much of these things really only exist because of the Muslim tradition. And I'm not saying it is identically that, but they exist because of that. So the Muslim tradition preserved, they were the major kind of medical pioneers. They were the scientists of the age called hukama. They were people that preserved Greek philosophy. They were people that did all of that, which then hundreds of years later triggered a revolution in Europe, which was in the Dark Ages. So in many ways, the Prophet has directly or indirectly touched the lives of most of humanity as we know it today. Maybe directly, maybe indirectly. So now people could argue that, look, oh, well, if the Prophet hadn't come and Islam hadn't come, maybe some other tradition would have done that. Well, Christianity definitely wasn't doing it, because Christianity was very anti reason. It wasn't anti reason, but actually, in early Christianity was. And people like St. Thomas Aquinas, who are then influenced by Ibn Rushd, they broaden the scope. But somebody could argue that maybe other traditions would have picked it up, but it didn't seem that way. History, so pre-Islam, you've got hundreds of years of Christianity. It doesn't seem to be going that way. Somebody could argue maybe a different religion would have done it, but it didn't seem that way. So, yeah, I'm just going by the facts as we have them. Opening Foroculus says, "Are you Muslim?" Yep, of course I'm Muslim. Mufti, do you watch The Office? I have watched The Office. It is hilarious, but I'm not watching it right now, if that's what you mean. Imdad al-Haq says, your thoughts on Edmonton Islamic Centre Masjid in North London. It's I don't know too much about it. I have visited it briefly many years ago. In fact, our beloved Sheikh Yasser Qadi came, and I did visit it, and I did meet him many years ago. Probably about 5 years now, 5 years ago or something. So, and I don't know if he's still there, but a good friend of mine, Imam Guli, alright, Gul Faraz was the Imam of Edmonton Masjid. That's at that time, so we're talking about 5 years ago. So I don't know whether he stayed on or not. Unfortunately, I've not been in touch with him in these past couple of years. So I hope he's well. But yeah, so I mean, from what I heard, there were good things at that time about the masjid. I don't know if anything's happened or if there's been any scandals, or I don't know about that. So Colin says, you missed my super chat. What the hell? Let me check what super chats have been missed. I'm just looking. Nope. Super chatted, is hellfire in duration? Sorry? Is hell finite in duration? I'm thinking, is it finite in duration? Well, I guess it depends on who you're asking. And then there's a question. You see, to me, the afterlife, the things, the descriptions and the imagery that are mentioned in the Quran are symbolic. They are not literal. So it's more a symbolism referring to the afterlife. What that symbolism will then eventuate to be, or what it means in its actuality, is something beyond, for the most part, beyond human comprehension. So therefore, we can't really identify with the afterlife. Yeah. Why John Del Vento, you're doing it with the super chat, has asked, why aren't there more isnads and biographies of transmitters in English? Are all the good hadith stuff in those shiny Arabic books still? Right, so I don't think my Asanid books are over here. They're more over there. You guys won't be able to see them, but I've got a couple of shelves there, the ilal and different kinds of ilal, and you've got the su'alat and books of jarah wa ta'dil, and yeah, but a lot of it is online as well, really, to be honest. You can see it there. So why isn't it in English? Because in English, you won't get that audience that is studying hadith. Because if you're studying hadith criticism, it's most likely you've already studied Arabic. So it doesn't really make sense to have such an advanced text or advanced stuff in English. I don't know, that's what I'm assuming. Kaleem Ahmed has super chatted. You're doing it, Kaleem. Much love, much love. Salam Mufti, can you tell us about what? Can you tell us something about Badruddin al-Hassani? I saw a clip from Adnan Ibrahim talking highly of him. Was he one of the good guys? Of course he's one of the good guys. Why would you assume differently? Whoa, there seems to be some proper spamming going on. Let me just see. Okay. Some of the descriptions of the hellfire are super frightening, like drinking boiling water. I don't feel, or any description of the afterlife is simply symbolism. It's not a literal description. And we know that because the Prophet himself taught that the afterlife is something you can't conceptualize. Look, think of it like this, people. Allah speaking to us about the ruh, which is consciousness, says that, this is something you can't entirely conceptualize or you can't entirely fathom. That, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. A small amount maybe you'll understand about consciousness. That is consciousness. What do you think of the actuality of the afterlife? I think it's beyond true comprehension for us. So all these things mentioned in the Quran are just, they kind of, it's imagery to motivate or to incentivize or to intimidate, because that's how these things work. When you have you see, when you don't have things like a police system, which the world didn't have back then, and the law is not something that is easily implemented, so you have to have a heightened sense of self-morality. Now, that's great, and some people may just develop that, but other people may not. So you need to have a greater level of threat. And this is actually what, later philosophers who studying human history had arrived at as well, saying that, look, actually, this is how mankind works. And you see, Jeremy Bentham and other people have also discussed this, that, look, when you can't just catch people because there's a lot of lawlessness and there's a lack of structure in society, then the threats must be heightened in order to create an equilibrium. Like, you can't just, and when there's more structure, the threats are, they are, on many, they don't have to be, they can still be quite strict on some things, but on other things they will become less horrific, because now you can catch people when they do things, like when you've got cameras everywhere and you've got a society where people will get caught. So you don't need to now really scare people that much about, oh my God, you better not do, because you will just catch them if they do it anyway. Whereas if you're, in certain parts of the world where you have to say, well, you know what, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And that's the way the human psyche works. Yeah. Mufti, what are your thoughts on a Sufa Institute? Mufti, do some perfume reviews. Are you into the gourmand? The gourmand perfumes. I am as well. Try Roja. Alright. Roja Parfum Sweet Oud. I believe I've got that. I believe so, but if not, I'm not actually so much into the ouds, but okay, I'll briefly, I'll show you these two that I've got here. They are very good, and I'll do a brief review of them in just a moment. Mufti, what are your thoughts on Sufa Institute? Yeah, I think, you see, if you're going to go to a madrasa, then I guess why not? A Sufa Institute is an institute set up in Birmingham that's been running now for, I think, maybe a decade, if not a bit more, or yeah, probably a bit more than a decade. and it's set up by Sheikh Zahir. They've got some great people there, Mufti Liaqat and other people. It is if that's your thing, then if that's what you're looking for, then fine. But like all madrasas, it falls short on critical thought. It's not that it falls short. It's not just that it falls short, but the madrasa system that we have, the Darul Uloom system, it actually dumbs down your critical faculties. This is the problem. So it's not that it doesn't promote it, it's actually anti critical thought, which is, in this day and age, you don't want to create dumb people. You see, that's a huge problem. So I think the madrasa system either needs to go under some kind of radical reform, or they are, for the most part, they're defunct, and they're not actually, they're dysfunctional. They're producing broken, handicapped results, products, and commodities. So, yeah. And then the other thing is that things like places like As-Sufa. I don't know if they've changed now, but they did have this weird, which Darul Uloom have, I guess, overall, this kind of obsession with a weird identity politics, as in your dress. You have to dress in a certain way. You have to have a certain type of beard. You can never, like, this kind of a haircut would be banned. It's actually banned. Imagine that, like grown men, like telling grown men you're not allowed to cut your hair like that. I mean, I would be damned if I have to take, if 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 as a grown man I'm being told, oh, I can't have a particular hairstyle. I mean, it's like, and I don't mean, somebody could say, well, you could be a particular person, and I'm not talking something so radical to society, like you turn up with like some punk, I don't know, glow in the dark green hair, and people are like, what the hell are you doing? I don't mean something like that. I mean just something, just having a fade would be not only deemed haram, but you would actually get struck off from the institute. So I remember there was some case that a Sufa had a couple of years back, where they actually didn't allow a student to graduate because he used to have short back and sides, basically just have that kind of a hairstyle. So they said, and even though I think he said he'll grow it out, they said, we don't trust you. Then there's the rest of the world that have other trust issues. And then there's this madrasa system where they're saying, we don't trust you. That you might go on in your life and decide to have a fade. And it's like, okay, and that's like, the equivalent is like, imagine you did your medical degree and they refuse, or you've done a PhD, let's say, although this isn't a PhD level, but let's say a medical degree actually. So, or you've done law and you've done your, what do they call it? The LPC. And just before, prior to graduation, like let's say a couple of months before, you're told, we're not going to allow you to actually graduate as a doctor or a lawyer. Why? Because you've got this short back and sides hairstyle. We don't trust you. That even if you decide to have normal, I mean, this is how dumb it sounds. It's like, I must have misheard it. So yeah, so these are the problems with Darul Ulooms, really. So I think people need to they need to do something about that, because it produces handicapped people, and you can go against it. You can, to be fair, if you were allowed be to graduate but have your critical thought. Like, I went through a madrasa system, but I went through it abroad, and I suppose we were kind of allowed to get away with it. And then I came back and kind of like further polished my critical thinking skills, and then in that sense it's great. But to be fair, I did have to go through a lot of slack, especially from in the early years after, when graduating, just before graduating, and after it for a few years, because a lot of people will hate on you. They will try to block you, prevent you. It's really you need thick skin, really, to go through all of that. And I think most people are not cut out for it. I don't think most people can handle it. Obviously, not everybody's going to be like your Mufti Abu Layth. People are going to have a meltdown. Yeah. Somebody said the local madrasa said the hair, it's like the army uniform, needs to be one length. Yeah, which is dumb. But yeah, it's as dumb as it gets, really. So, applying critical analysis, you learn to uni to deen. In uni to deen. Don't know what that means. Mufti Faz, you're doing it with the super chat. Much love. Mufti, loved your atheist debates. When do you plan to do some more of these? Chit royal. I mean, therapy sessions. Can they not think so critically? So lame. I'm not sure what I don't know whether it's just today or whether it's the questions. I don't know whether I'm a bit dazed out today. Right, Ahsanullah Kushkaki, loving parents bring forth punishments as deterrents. Parents don't create the punishments with the hope to punish. I have understood this to be similar with Allah. Hell is a deterrent. I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Allah does not have to punish anyone. I'm 100% with that perspective. As in, that is actually the orthodox Sunni position, that Allah doesn't have to do anything like that. John Looney says, Abu Layth, when you getting married? Huh? When you get... Cha! Proposal! You, naughty. Trying to create the scandal. I know you're busy with... No, that's somebody else. Red Sulfur. Mufti Abu Layth had to do a beard check to take exams in Pakistan. That is true, actually. In Pakistan, they wouldn't let you take the exam without doing a beard check. It's dumb, but I suppose, look, I went through it almost 2 decades ago, or a decade and a half ago at least. So I finished in 2005? So, I mean, it's over 15 years ago, and when I was in madrasa, I put up with it and I did all of that. But I'm saying today the world has changed and people don't want to really put up with stuff like that. I wouldn't have the patience to put up with it now. As being much older than I am now, I wouldn't. It would be utterly, utterly insulting for somebody to kind of try to micromanage me at this age. I suppose when you're younger, you're more... Because I left home to study just as I turned 18. Now think about it, you're a teenager, you're already kind of used to, your parents kind of telling you, and you already have restrictions on life. You have to answer to your parents, you have to answer to, you may get a job, you have to answer to a boss. You're still treated as a kid. even though you just turned 18, but you were a kid, and to many people, you're still a kid. So as you go into madrasa, it's not such a transition to, people micromanaging or trying to micromanage you. You can put up with it, but later on in life, hell no. This one not nice, my friend. Crazy Midget says, Mufti, answer my question, please. Zebaji asks an interesting question. What is a truthful lie? Allah, Allah, Allah. It's interesting. What is a truthful lie? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that one, but I'm seeing that as a philosophical one. That, what is a truthful lie? How about reality? Allah. Or real existence? What if it is all but a simulation? More and more science does seem to show that maybe reality is a simulation, and in many ways it would actually answer a lot of the the theodicy questions about good and evil. They would have a better explanation if reality was a simulation, but it would still feel real, but it's a simulation. I mean, what if? I think that could be a truthful, but I think reality is a truthful lie. Reality generally, everything, what we observe, what we experience, these things are truthful, but they're kind of lies, because in reality, we know in objective reality, it doesn't exist. There are no such thing as colors or sounds, or there's no such thing as taste, and these things are simple stimulations and readings of certain stimulations. They don't have an objective reality to them, so I guess it's a lie. The human, our stories, understanding of the world is ultimately a lie, because it's just a story. But I guess they're truthful. I don't know if that is the question you're asking, but Ali Rana says, Salam Mufti, kidda? Oh, kidda, Ali Rana, what's going down? Shamaz Leela says, Salam Mufti, you're doing it with the super chat. You have previously said that music is halal. It is halal, even if it is violent and hypersexual. Yeah, bar sacks. Why does the questions come back to? They come back to the socks. The socks. My question is, what are your thoughts on the music videos that will? Oh damn, where's it gone? That they will make for the song. I don't know what you want me to say. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Like, sometimes I think, like, what does this person want me to say? Look, music is not haram. Sexual lyrics, these are more propriety issues, ain't they? They're not haram, but there's kind of guidelines on how you would, obviously it's not appropriate for certain age to be having these words, using words. You wouldn't use them in certain settings. You wouldn't use them in a professional setting. You wouldn't use them around children. You wouldn't use them around. I mean, but these are human propriety issues. I think we all understand this as human beings. We don't need a sudden revelation to explain it to us that, the president of a country, while speaking, wouldn't just start uttering swear words. I mean, everybody knows that. It's nothing, it's not rocket science. It doesn't need such a, whoa, we need a revelation from God to say that. But it doesn't make it haram. It doesn't make the sexualized. If you think about it, is not most of always a huge part of classical, not a huge, but classical Arabic poetry has hypersexual aspects to it. It's not all about that. But then war is, what? It's interesting how people are happy to sideline war. Like, they don't see that as a problem. You don't see, like, if you take Arabic poetry or even modern world perspectives, movies, okay, maybe not so much songs, but movies, games, Warcraft, or sorry, Minecraft, but PUBG and all these other games, Call of Duty, and they're all about killing and fighting and shooting and destroying, and people don't really have a problem with that. It's interesting, isn't it, that we are much more forgiving of violence, and that too, um, astounding violence. I don't just mean like a slap or a punch. I mean like shooting, massacring, decimating towns and villages. Like, we are much more forgiving of that when it's just portrayed in a movie or in a game than we are of anything sexual, which is really shocking when you think about it, because something sexual isn't violent. I mean, unless it's sexual violence, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just generally something sexual. Human society today it sees that as like, whoa, what the hell is this? So what the hell? Ye kya ho raha hai? Yeah. Whereas violence is, yeah, it's just a game, yaar. But I think there's a huge philosophical question here. That wait a minute, why are we so okay with something about the spilling of blood, about witnessing that, if we see it as on a movie, we think it's just a movie. But we're not okay with anything sexual. Now you need to question your own bearings, your ball bearings, where they are, and your compass. Is this just Victorian? Are you just the product of, this whole of colonial thought? Mufti, you've been listening to too much Joe Rogan. I haven't, actually. I don't listen to that much Joe Rogan. I should. He has great shows, but I just don't get round to it. Mariam says he never answers me, Inaya, because Mufti, I'm allowed to cheat on my wife? Question mark. Look at this. Let's get his wife on the live. Expose this person. And let them have their own private discussions. Mufti, can you bring Khalid Siddiq on mindtrap? Yeah, sure. I'll bring on Khalid. I'll drop him. Actually, I did ask Khalid Siddiq. He was saying to me he was busy preparing videos and doing things like that. Obviously, that's his profession. He's a singer, so. Where in the UK are you from? From Birmingham, in the Midlands. You're doing it. Right, so. Mufti, answer my question. Crazy Midget is still asking his question. I don't know what your question is. Crazy Midget is saying he got shortchanged. Well, let's see if you can just post it again. What episode of Mirzapur? I've clocked Mirzapur. I clocked it straight away. I just binge watched it. Right, let me see. Oh, right. Crazy Midget's question is, can you see him meet the Prophet in a wakeful state? If not, why? Well, just like this, you can't. You can't just see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That doesn't make any sense, unless you mean that mentally you go into another dimension. So it's not here, but you're saying, let's say a person was on a trip, mental trip. That way you're not here, but you're kind of here, as in your body's still here. In that sense, you can have experiences that are out of otherworldly experiences, which can't really be explained in regular terms. So you'll see colors that don't exist in this world. You'll experience things like synesthesia, that where you can see sound and you can hear colors, and you can you have different otherworldly experiences. So in that sense, yeah, if somebody said I saw the Prophet, fine, that's an otherworldly experience whilst they are tripping, let's say, whether that means through the medium of psychedelics, or whether it means, they entered into that, they simulated a kind of trip state by, hyperventilating or breathing in a certain way, and they kind of like ended up, because you can sometimes reach near, you can't have the exact same experience as being on psychedelics without, but you can get near it by sometimes hyperventilating and by having certain breathing, because the way the oxygen hits the brain, it can cause it to have a similar kind of trip. Although it's not the same, it won't ever be the same as actual mediums, but it may be similar. So yeah. Ahsanullah Khushkaki, Mufti needs help keeping up with the super chats. They stay getting missed. I don't think I've missed many super chats. I have, on the spot, name your 5 personal favorite Sahaba and why. I don't know if it works like that. With me, I don't know, honestly. I would like I will read about different companions, and then whilst I'm reading about them and studying them, I will find them very fascinating, intriguing. Definitely, like recently when I was studying Salma radiallahu anha, I found her very fascinating, and I would say, wow, that's. But I don't know if I personally have a list of, as in, these are my favorite companions. I don't personally view the companions in that way. To me, I will have obviously stories like all of you have of companions, or histories that I've read, and I know that, oh, they're amazing. I know that how, for example, they were with the Prophet. So the Prophet, certain companions were obviously more closer to him than others. Like Abu Bakr was obviously close, Umar was close, Ali was close, Talha was close. Zubayr is definitely, I would say, if I was to say, amongst a favorite, definitely put Zubayr ibn al-Awwam amongst a favorite. Now you could say, well, why? And I'd be kind of see, it's just, I guess, my reading of him, his kind of personality, his um having for some reason, I just feel a kind of emotional favoring of people like Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. But really, I know that several of these were close to the Prophet, but I don't, in my world, they don't work like these are my favorite ones that I will always the go to. It doesn't, in my world, it's not like that. Um, I will just read about them, and sometimes you may like some of them for certain things that they've said, but it doesn't mean that you have to now always they are your number one go to. It's not like that. Yeah. I don't, just with me, I don't know. Maybe if you ask a different person, they may say, certain companions, they may say Umar radiallahu an, because he's like an iconic companion. But obviously, I do think as well that Umar radiallahu an is unquestionably, he's an iconic companion, and I think he kind of ruled in a certain way that it became very dreamy for others who came after him. That they always wanted it's not what they wanted what he had, but they wanted to also have that. So they wanted their time to also be like his time. But I think these things don't usually happen. So, but yeah, but then he was obviously very strict as well. And sometimes, yeah, so I don't know if I would always, my way of looking at the world, it definitely isn't in that kind of a strict way. So, I don't know if, unfortunately, I have to probably let you down by not being able to answer it in the way you probably anticipated. Ismail Akram says Ibn Rushd or Ibn Hazm. See, that's really interesting because I really admire them both. I do. I really admire them both. And it's interesting because both are philosophical, both are critical. So, and obviously they're not in the same time. Like, so Ibn Rushd is after Ibn Hazm. So, he's, I, it's a tricky one, that is. Nabil Khan, you're doing it. Much love for the super chat. It says you're a Donny. A Donny. Could you shed light on conspiracies such as the moon landing? Look, the moon landing has definitely happened, but whether the first moon landing was a farce, I've seen both sides. I can accept. I think it's reasonable to assume that it could have been staged. But by now, obviously, people have been to the moon. But in the initial race, whether it was going to be the Americans or the Russians, could the Americans have forged it? I can accept that. I definitely feel that there's a lot of corruption in the American system, much more than other systems. I feel the Americans have always had a very corrupt side to them. Even till today, I feel that the American administration is very corrupt, but in a way that it hides it. 9/11, yeah, I still till date feel that the 9/11 is suspect. Like, I don't know what it was, I don't know how it was, but I feel that the way the building collapses and all of that documentary, what was it called? Loose Change. I find that very intriguing. So, Diana murdered. Yeah, Diana. I definitely think the royal family, the Queen. Queen said, "Boss." She's like, "Yeah. Mwah. Have a great trip. Have a great." She's like, definitely, I feel, and I feel this is part of the reason, in my theory, why Prince Harry doesn't like get on with the royal family. I feel part of it was because he knows that they murdered his mom. I genuinely do feel that. That's at the core. Like, that's one of the core reasons. Yep. Okay. I hope that helps. Kapil Patel, you're doing it. Did you continue your research into Abraham and the Indus Valley? I mean, I read it up and did my research at the time. I don't know what else. I mean, I did a bit more here and there. There was an interesting video on YouTube. It's about Mohenjo-daro. So Mohenjo-daro, which is in Pakistan, modern day Sindh, Pakistan. But what's interesting is in the documentary as well, I didn't know this until just after I'd made my video. The person actually says that they show certain, because one of the famous figurines is the man with the beard. But he says that, oh, there's claims that this is to do with that Abraham was from Mohenjo-daro and his family, and I was like quite wowed to hear that on the documentary. All right, Sam E, you're doing it. Much love, Mufti Salam. Is it real that some Ummayyad Caliphs established extra taxes for non-Arab people? If yes, what was their reason? Mohenjo-daro was such a boring movie. Yeah, no, this Mohenjo-daro here, when I'm saying Mohenjo-daro, I'm not talking about the movie. I'm talking about the actual city, the historical. That wasn't its name, by the way. It's actual. The name they tend to go by is what they're assuming was like Maluha or something, because that's what the Mesopotamian correspondence refers to the settlement of Mohenjo-daro as Maluha. But Mohenjo-daro is what it's called today. I'm talking about that, not the movie by Hrithik Roshan called Mohenjo-daro. Yeah, so the Umayyad Caliphs, coming back to that question, they were taxing people, but it's not. You see, when you say they invented extra taxes for non-Arabs, it is true, but not in this in that sense. You see, because when you say it like that, it sounds like they came to a place and said, "Oh, you Arab, okay, you go here. You non-Arab, you line up there and you pay tax." It wasn't quite like that. It's just most everybody, that whole region, was non-Arab. They weren't Arabs. So in that sense, if you're saying, well, did they start a new tax system with them and things? They did. And were they non-Arabs? They were. So did they introduce new tax systems to non-Arabs? They did. But it's not quite in that way, structured quite like that. It's just they found themselves ruling over new territories, most of whom were not Arabs. What they then did was inherited some of the structural administrative processes on how to tax. So you have to remember the Arabian Peninsula and places like that weren't as fertile as the northern kingdoms. And when they've reached like Persia and these kind of places, and beyond what would be modern day Iran, modern day parts of Afghanistan, these regions, they they had a lot of like very fertile, and more than that, they already had a history, a legacy of the Persian dynasties ruling over them that had a sophisticated structure set up on how contracts, on how you will deal with the lands and how you will give us this and do that. And the Arabian Peninsula didn't have anything. Like, it did have very basic primitive. Compared to that, they were primitive. So, yeah, so they ended up. It's a bit like saying, like, imagine you were in somewhere like rural Pakistan, and all of a sudden you move to places like Paris or London. Now, places like Paris and London have completely different market structures, and they already have an economic structure set up. So you would inherit that, and they would have different. So here, like let's say in the UK, you'd have taxes set at 20%, but once you hit a certain band, it now increases to 40%. Once you hit another band, it increases again. So Whereas if you're just dealing with rural Pakistan, they probably don't have it like that. But when you inherit this system, you will then go with these taxes, and that's what they did as well. But I'm not trying to justify the cause. I'm just explaining that yes, it is true that if you're asking, you didn't ask the question, were they racist and discriminatory? They were discriminatory to non-Arabs, but I don't think the tax system was because they didn't like non-Arabs. I don't think it was because of that. And I don't think it's that they didn't like non-Arabs. I think they probably did like them and they didn't mind non-Arabs, but they felt that the pure Arabs were first class above them. So there's a difference. There is a difference between that and not liking. Like the way Hitler hated the Jews, they weren't like that towards non-Arabs. They didn't hate non-Arabs like that. All right, people. Whoa, is this the time? Is this the time? You know what? Let's go on to why are there taxes in the UK? Now, what are the taxes? Tax. Why do you know when you think about it? Income tax is ridiculous, isn't it? It's absolutely ridiculous. It's absurd that we have income tax. Honestly, it's a ridiculously accepted concept. Because really, you are paying to earn. Which, it's like I'm paying a third party who has nothing to do with my work to be able to, because I'm doing my work. It is utterly illogical. And it's a tyranny, honestly. It is a tyranny. I definitely feel, although it's part of the structure of this world that we live in, this developed world, but I feel it is a tyranny. And in the future, I feel that generations, when they change all of this system, and I feel they will at some point in the future, they will look back at us and think, how did they actually just accept it? It's stupid. Mufti, are you left wing or right wing? Hassan G, you're doing it. I don't know about. I'm definitely not right wing, so I don't know what that means exactly, but I would be more left than right, presumably. Yeah, definitely. I think so. I don't know. Because some people, it's funny, like they say to me, oh my God, you've got like certain views which are more traditional. So they'd place me some. But I don't want to confuse left with the militant left. I'm not like that at all. Like I don't feel that you can impose political correctness on people. I hate that stuff. I absolutely abhor that stuff of like trying to impose political correctness. I feel political correctness can, showing my middle finger to it. Like I don't really care much for that. So in that sense, I don't know where that places me. Is that more anarchist or I don't know. But generally I'm more anti-authoritarian, which means liberal, isn't it? So the more liberal you are, you believe that authorities ought to have less. The lesser the power they have over you, the better. So yeah, I'm in line with that. Coke or Pepsi? Wow, look at the intricate questions today. Right. Wow, these are the football. I don't watch that, man. Mufti, do you wax your chest? Here they go. Look at what's bothering the people. They're like, yeah, just Mufti. Aja. Is that what's keeping you up? Mufti, it's not. Small government is a right-wing concept. Small government is a right-wing concept. I'm not saying small. I'm saying that they should have less authority over you. I don't think in Europe that's a right wing. I think that might be an American thing. But here, l- l- liberals are people who believe in having more liberty from the authorities. That's what a liberal actually means. So, yeah. All right. So, what is going on? Crazy Midget said, Mufti, I love you. Love you too, yeah. Love you too. I'm missing Mufti. I'm missing Auntie Troller. I don't know why something happened to Auntie G. Can you breastfeed as a man? What is happening to the world? You see, what is happening to these roles, huh? You do get hold of these, these kind of artificial suckling devices, artificial breasts that some men use to feed children. They, you see, this is an interest because I do believe when it comes to roles, you see, so I'm a bit old fashioned on that. So that's interesting. So I wonder where that places me. Yeah. Somebody, how do you, कैसे सवालात कैसे so? Right? Cold water or room temperature water with ice. It's always with ice. Ice. It's all about the ice, people. Mufti, did you ever meet Pir Saqib Shami? Is Pir Saqib Shami such a... I suppose he is now a big celebrity. Yeah, of course. He never used to always be like that. And so I did used to meet him. I mean, when I say used to meet, sorry, I've met him a couple of times before in his earlier days. Right, so... right, okay, let's move on to this. Let's move on to our discussion, people. Un momento. Let me just check. Right, because I'm kind of... I think it's just been a long day as well. I'm going to end up falling asleep right here. So, people... Some Mufti, please explain the Baal Mubarak. Is the Prophet's hair, is it legit? No, this ain't going to be legit. This is not going to be, these kind of things that, oh, this is a hair from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I really doubt any of that is true. What would be interesting is if they allow to do DNA tests on it. I don't know how much of the DNA would be preserved, but that would be interesting. But I really doubt any of these things go back to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Navy is, यार ये कैसे सवालात हैं? What kind of women? ये क्या हो क्या रहा है बाबा? Right, so, alright, so people, let's take a look at a video clip. Un momento. Alright, so, taking a look, where did I put this video clip? Let me just see. Right, can I see it here? Nope. Right, is it?
When things are going wrong in our lives.
So, people, I was sent a clip by Sheikh Umar Suleiman where he's speaking about jinn possession. Now, I'm using that as the kind of archetypal example, even though many people do speak about this. It's not, to be fair, it's not exclusive to Sheikh Umar Suleiman, but it's just that because he has a significant reach, I'm using him as a prime example to show that despite being, level-headed on many things, yet even people like that will push and circulate and promote superstitions as part of the faith. Why do they do this? and I want to play this clip explaining it, and then I'll just go into it briefly. I think we have to question the reason they do this. It's much more, there's so many things interlocked. You have to remember that these people are part of they have a commodity that they're trying to sell. There is a market that will buy that commodity, what they are selling. Now, they must always, to some extent, appease the greater market, even at times. Now, I don't know whether maybe Sheikh Umar Suleiman himself believes in this stuff. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But he will appease that market because that market is where his stuff will ultimately float and sell. And you have to remember that. So let's take a look at this clip. It's a couple of minutes long. And he goes through, he gives his explanations, and he gives 1-2 anecdotes. Let's take a look.
When things are going wrong in our lives, we tend to always want to blame something external. So we tend to want to say that someone did this to me, or someone must have put this on me, someone put a spell on me, so forth. But is there such thing as a jinn actually possessing a human being actually being possessed by a jinn? It does exist. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He affirms this in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَى لَا يَقُومُونَ إِلَّا كَمَا يَقُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, describing the people who engage in usury and riba and interest, that they would stand on the day of judgment just like the one who is possessed and who's overtaken and being beaten on the inside and so on and so forth by the shayateen. So a person who's possessed by the jinn. By Allah saying that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again is acknowledging that there are some people that can actually be possessed by the jinn. And in a way, all of us have to deal with al-qareen, as we said. We all have to deal with the one that's constantly whispering in us. And in a way, we're all possessed to an extent. Because the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna shaytana yajri min ibni Adama majra dam, that shaitan flows through the blood
this hadith,
of the son of Adam, the way that, or flows through his veins, the way that blood flows through his veins. Meaning, you're always dealing with this to an extent. However, again, you're keeping it under control by keeping your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing the things
that bring about
protection in your life, and so on and so
Let's
forth.
take a look.
Now, it's important for us to find a middle ground here.
Middle
balance. Things that cannot be explained except by these things that are supernatural. Right? And again, I'm not talking about the fake stuff. I'm talking about things that are real. Any imam of any masjid actually has had people come into his office and has seen things from people that are definitely supernatural and definitely people that are dealing with jinn. And then of course you talk to people that
most
are
imams have
Rafis,
seen this, by the way.
That actually try to extract jinn from people in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah, and underline in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah, because there's a lot of shady business that takes place there too. And they've seen a lot of things. So it's important for us to not deny everything that we've never actually dealt with or seen, and at the same time not to exaggerate. Right? I once had someone tell me that I think I'm possessed by a jinn. I said, why? She said, because when I read Quran, I get sleepy. I'm like,
now listen to his actual explanation.
Actually, right? That you get sleepy and you get tired as you read Quran, right? Because if a person was truly possessed, they would actually feel pain.
You'd feel pain
when they read Quran. So yes, sometimes jinn can possess people, and in fact, sometimes jinn can actually speak through human beings, right? And subhanAllah, it's a very frightening experience, and you can and people have experienced that. And the easiest way to get possessed, the easiest way to bring that into your life is to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you disobey Allah, particularly when you do something major, like leave off the prayer, the ulama frequently associated a person leaving off prayer with jinn possession. Why? Because you remove the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Basically, most of the world.
Or if you do the major sins, and particularly Allah mentioned, for example, one of the most disgusting sins, which is riba, which is usury. And I can tell you that I've rarely dealt with anyone that had that issue, except that they were dealing with a major sin, that they were not.
So he never dealt with a person possessed, except they used to commit some major sin.
Was when a relative who does come to the masjid brought them and said, my cousin, my brother, my sister, so on and so forth, is possessed by jinn, or someone that sells haram, or so on and so forth. So that's the easiest way to have that happen to you, is to allow the protection of Allah to be removed from you by doing those things. And remember that when you do things that offend the angels, they leave you. And when the angels leave you, the shayateen come around. So if you're surrounding yourself by shayateen constantly, and doing things that cause the angels to leave you, then what do you expect is going to happen to you?
I don't know. Right, people. So you just had an explanation there by Sheikh Umar Suleiman about the jinn. Now, before we just go into the actual response to there is no such thing as jinn possession, just to look at what he said. He said he based his thing on saying that, look, we should be balanced. Okay. But this thing, there is no balance in this thing. By the way, this is either on or off. It doesn't work. It's like saying, look, you shouldn't really switch it on. You shouldn't switch it off. You should be balanced. Your balance. You see, it doesn't work like that, because when you say supernatural, you say, like if I say, look, guys, what he's saying is things should be realistic but supernatural, but they should be balanced. It's like, what does that mean now? Because it's either supernatural, so supernatural can be anything. Now to say no, but it must be a balanced version of supernatural. The whole purpose of supernatural is it doesn't make sense. That's what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense. So to say, well, no, but it shouldn't make sense, but it should still make, it should, it doesn't, this is absolutely, it's just stupid to say that, okay, but let's have a balanced, nonsensical approach. Because there is no balance to nonsensical. It's either sensical or it's nonsensical. It doesn't, to say it's either rational or irrational, but let's have some balanced irrationality. It's like, how do you balance guy? You're looking for the wrong thing here. So, okay, that's one part. But okay, so he tries to come off quite moderate. He then says, look, most imams have all experienced some supernatural phenomena. I don't know what the hell I think what they've experienced, most imams, that's some naughty that they've experienced. It's not actually supernatural. It's wrongful, this. So I don't know what these imams have experienced that he claims. But anyway, okay, we'll put that aside. He then highlights that, look, this is proven from the Quran was Sunnah. Okay, so he feels that it's clearly proven. He then explains one of the major reasons, because you might ask, well, if we can be possessed, why are we possessed? How do we get possessed? He says, well, you get possessed by disobeying God. Ah, okay. And one of the major ways is you don't pray. Ah, so that's like basically easily 95% of the globe. The entire globe. Then he says, well, another thing, one of the main reasons is a prime example of disobeying God is riba. Riba meaning you take more than you give or something which is basically the entire economic structure of this globe right now is based on that. If you consider that haram, obviously I don't. Not that I agree with it, but I don't consider it haram. I have a detailed video for that. You can watch it. But so in that sense, the entire globe is partaking in that. So, okay. So we're all susceptible to jinn possessions. The other thing is, on a side note, I just want to say that, this is the problem. This is just a side jumla mu'tarida. I'm just mentioning this as a tangent. That look, when these imams start acting too pious, this is what contributes to their downfall. It's like some of them will say things like, never, if a girl messages you, never respond, never do this, never, and then they'll get caught doing this, and it'll be a big oh my God, this guy's, and you'll get like Sheikh Umar Suleiman here saying, riba, oh my God, money, astaghfirullah, this is the biggest sin, the most disgusting sin. Now, this is where, and you'll probably find in the future that that will, because people, when they overdo it with a pious thing, that's usually their weakness. So you wouldn't be surprised if a money thing is what comes out later on. So, but anyway, that's a tangent. No, on a tangent, I'm just saying that. But sticking to this topic of jinn possession. Look, people, whenever you're about to deal with something, you must ask for evidences from the Quran wa Sunnah. And you must ask why. There must be objectives. Okay, so the first question is, can we be possessed? If we can, right, just asking, what is the objective of jinns possessing us? There must be an objective that they can possess us for what? So people will say to cause mischief, to cause harm. Now, they will tell you, like Ibn Taymiyyah, who's a major proponent, and all these people, even Umar Suleiman, you have to remember his background was a Salafi background, or that kind of Ikhwani, that whole, which is very, very influenced from that same kind of way of thinking. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah is one of the key problems that you'll find, that he's like, etiologically, you're going to find him as a major he's a super spreader of this virus, Ibn Taymiyyah, because he really goes overboard with this whole jinn thing. And I did mention before, look, I do like some things of Ibn Taymiyyah and his student Ibn Qayyim, but in all honesty, Ibn Taymiyyah probably had, some kind of mental health issues. Now, he is a huge super spreader of this thing about jinn possession. So in his lifetime, he's this person, he says, oh, I know, he kind of identifies certain letters that people receive, and he says, oh, jinns write these letters, and I'm a specialist on reading. He claims to be a specialist on jinn's handwriting. And he claims, I'm not making this up, Salafis have actually published this stuff. They boast about it, but he used to claim to be a specialist on identifying jinn handwriting. And so he writes about this, how he can pick up which letters have come from people and which have come from jinn to mislead people. And he writes, and other people, they believe that jinn can take the forms of anything. So this microphone could be a jinn. A dog, a cat, a snake, a person. This screen could be a jinn. It could be a book. It could be a table. Jinn could be anything. So now coming back to the objective. If the objective of the jinn is to create mischief, this is the objective, then tell me something. Why doesn't the jinn just become a false page in the Quran? How would you know? If that's all the jinn, like, how would you know? Why doesn't the jinn just become, because if that's all the jinn, because think about it, if all you had to do was read a page in the Quran, but remember there's billions of jinn, so if all of them became a false page in the Quran, or not all of them, but millions of them became a false page in the Quran, how is that so difficult for them? Secondly, let's take it, that is actually, let's just take an example of terrorists. You've got, let's say, ISIS. For all you know, let's say we Muslims generally hate ISIS. They could just be possessed. It's not really their fault. Why is it their fault? They're just possessed. Because a jinn, think about it, if you were a jinn and you wanted to harm Islam, why not just become, brainwash, not possess somebody, make him into a suicide bomber, and then people will hate Islam. So really, it's not that person's fault. He's possessed, isn't he? So what's the big deal? If you accept jinn possession, everything in Islam becomes redundant. This screen that you're watching now could just be a demon. How do you know? What your sheikh has taught you could just be a demon. Maybe the person who taught you the Quran was a demon. How do you know? Like, how do you know anything? Anything could just be a demon. Like I said, the whole pages in the Quran, verses in the Quran could be just demons camouflaging. So becomes ridiculous. It becomes dumb. Now they're going to say, oh no, but this is, you see that this is the thing. Like, oh no, let's balance it. What do you mean balance it? It doesn't make any sense. If you're a demon and the purpose is to cause mischief, the other thing is, why, according to Sheikh Umar Suleiman, if they don't pray, that's basically the entire non-Muslim world. Why is it in the West, in the developed world, Jinn ain't just attacking everyone? What? Why do Jinn only attack Muslims? That too, Muslims who believe in Jinn possession. It's funny that Muslims who don't believe in Jinn possessions never get attacked by Jinn. Only Muslims who believe in Jinn possessions. That's the dumbest thing. Let's go to these verses that he mentioned. Now, this is right, just bringing this here. So as you can see, just gonna fix this. Right, you can see here, this is a verse of the Quran. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. Now, this is a verse you've got in Surah Baqarah speaking about riba. Now, the actual verse has nothing to do with jinn possession. Everybody's in agreement. The actual verse is speaking about people who consume riba on the day of judgment, or in the afterlife, they will be as though they have been afflicted by the devil. Now that's, so people said, well, like Sheikh Umar Suleiman said, well, why has Allah then mentioned this example unless it's meaningful? So why would God say as though they've been possessed, or it doesn't say possessed, but as though they've been touched by the devil, which was often a word used. Yatakhabbat means to be kind of like to be thrown around or smacked around, or it could mean to kind of be constantly falling. Now, to be chaotic with a touch of the devil. Now, this is simply, the answer is that Allah uses certain imagery that the Arabs at the time had some imaginative frame of reference for. And this isn't the only place in the Quran. Here is another example. You will see in this verse in Safat, Allah is saying, verse 65, that speaking about the afterlife, and in a particular tree in the pits of hell, that tala'uha, it emerges, as you can see here, verse 65, it emerges as though it is the heads of demons, of devils. Now, no insan has ever seen the heads of devils, so they don't know what this tree looks like. But why has Allah then given a frame of reference if nobody knows what the tree looks like? And the simple answer that everybody will say is that's to use your imagination. Everybody, and you can see that right there in that verse. Qurtubi says, oh, this is just for the Arabs to use their imagination. Not that anybody has actually seen what the heads of shayateen look like. Now, how do we know that jinn possession does not exist? Clearly by the Quran. You will see, here is a verse of the Quran. Now, in Surah Ibrahim, you will see, there's a verse right there, that وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانِ, and Shaitan said, لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرِ, when the affair was settled. So it's speaking about the afterlife. That when everything was settled, the Shaitan says that, he says that إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ, Allah had promised you something, and that turns out to be true. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ, and I promised you something, فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ, and I betrayed you. وَمَا, now listen to this. This is the Quran. Allah is saying, this is what the Shaitan himself is saying. وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ, I had no power over you, إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ, all I did was invite you. I said, hey, why don't you do this? فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. You responded. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي. Do not blame me. وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Blame yourselves. Now, why is this important? If the devil could actually take over your body, he could make you sick. Now, they believe that the devil can make you sick. He can make you die. He can cause death. He can cause cancer. He can cause diseases. He can cause schizophrenia. He can make you not... It's like Umar Sulaiman said in that video, oh, if you were possessed, if you recited the Quran, you would feel physical pain stopping you from reading the Quran. So he could cause you physically to stop doing righteous actions. How do you have willpower then? How is that? The Quran addresses you as though you have willpower. It tells you, look, why didn't you do this? That's totally unfair. If God is going to say, look, oh, why didn't you? It's like I ask you to do something. Oh, look, what? Hey, why don't you come over here and eat? And the moment you start walking over here, I've got like a trap set up. So now you get caught in that trap. And I go, well, hey, why don't you come over here and eat? And you're thinking, well, that's what I'm trying to do. But so if you're saying, well, wait a minute, God is saying pray. God is telling you recite the Quran. However, you can't recite the Quran because the devil will physically beat you up if you recite the Quran. Let's say he's punching you up from inside. He's giving you liver shots. So you're feeling, as in Umar Sulaiman said, physical pain. Like I'm actually suffering to read the Quran. Then how am I blamed for not reading the Quran? Let's say it was actual. Like if I was now, let's say it was Salah time, and an actual person said to me, or he said to you, that if you pray right now, I will beat you up. In Islam, you do not right now need to pray. You can wait till later on. You don't need, that is a valid excuse not to pray in Islam. There is a rukhsa. If you are about to face physical harm, you can not do it. You can choose to not do it. So if a person, let's say a person had a stick and he said, well, if you pray, I'm going to beat you with this stick right now. You cannot pray. You can choose. In Islam, it is absolutely, in fact, that is the suitable decision to not cause harm. Don't worry, you can make up for that salah. You don't need to pray right now. You don't need to take a physical abuse to pray. Allah does not, that you don't need to be some kind of So, if that's the actual case with a human, now with a jinn, if a jinn is beating me up when I'm praying, why do I have to pray? That's stupid. And why is it my fault for not praying then? This is utterly stupid. If a jinn is afflicting my ability to use reason, then how am I responsible for anything? If a jinn is making me kill someone, why do the laws apply to me? Because it could be a jinn. I could say, well, a jinn made me do it. So, and they use sometimes, some of these people, they use another verse in Surah Sad of Ayyub alayhi salam, when he says, Massani ash-shaytanu bin-nusbin wa adhab. Now, I did show here that in this, several mufassirin do highlight that, look, here with Ayyub alayhi salam, because the Quran, dur wal marad, he says that the harm is the illness he has. Walahu asbabun tabi'iyya. And this is Ibn Hibban speaking. Right. So he says, walahu asbabun tabi'iyya. Now this, Hayyan. Now, the illness has natural causes. Nobody's denying that. What the shaitan is doing is the waswasa. He's saying, oh, has God forsaken you? Has God made you? He's making him doubt God. So this has caused suffering. Naturally, it would cause suffering. So that's what it is. Now, let's not stop there. Let's go to, this is Fakhruddin al-Razi. You can see he clearly says, الشيطان لا قدرة له البتة. The shaitan has no power whatsoever على إيقاع الناس في الأمراض والآلام, that he can make people fall ill or that he can make them suffer pain. He has no power whatsoever over that. And you can see that right there. He has no power to cause death or to afflict, to impact life or to impact health. Because if that's the case, he would have just attacked prophets. He would have just killed them. He would have just, he doesn't have these powers. You are just giving him much more than he actually has. And I'll show you something interesting. Like Umar Sulaiman said, all these imams have witnessed jinns and all these things. Now check this out. This is Imam Shafi'i. Bayhaqi brings with a clear chain saying, Imam Shafi'i says, anybody who claims to have seen the jinn, we would refuse to accept that person's witness testimony. We would refuse to accept his witness testimony. And you've got, this is Ibn Hazm in his Fisal. He highlights as well. He mentions that, look, Allah mentioned certain things. Whoever increases above that about jinn possessions, he has followed what he has no knowledge about. وَهُوَ حَرَامٌ لَا يَحِلْ. It is haram for him to do that. And he says that the only thing we know is from a sound narration, and these things haven't come to us. And he does accept. Now you see, some of these scholars, they accept that they used to think maybe epilepsy was something to do with the demon. Now you have to understand why. Because look at epilepsy. Now go back hundreds of years and imagine looking at that phenomenon and not understanding how it's, because a person suddenly goes into shock. Sometimes they start foaming at the mouth, they start shaking, start smacking. And people don't know what's causing it, because a person could be absolutely fine. So in the past, some people felt that it had some internal, it was to do with humors. The humors reached the brain, they triggered this. And these people felt that maybe demons assisted those, like they did something for those humors to react in that way. And that they were basing it on their science of the day. That science is utterly wrong. We know that's not what triggers epilepsy, and it is the actual neural activity in the brain that is doing it. We can actually see it and measure it as it happens. So people of, like, obviously Ibn Hazm, living almost 1,000 years ago, he says that, look, these things may be to do with the humors, the Greek humors, the 4 humors that you have in the body, and maybe the devil has something to do with impacting those humors. But obviously that is the science of their day and age. But even he clearly says that, look, anything else is khurafat. So you've had Imam Shafi'i, you've had Fakhruddin al-Razi, you've had Ibn Hazm, you've got here Imam Tahawi. Look at this. He clearly says in his Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar that people have been asked to seek refuge from the shaitan in what the shaitan has capacity over them. And that is simply wahil waswasa, just insinuations, telling you, in making certain things look appealing. That's all. And he says that as to, he mentions wa amma i'tharu dawabihim, as to making what he says wa ihlaki amwalihim fala sababa lahu fiha, as to causing actual harm to them, or ruining their stuff, or making their animals suffer, or stuff. He says shaitan has no means of doing things like that. That is utterly out of the question. And so you have to just remember something. If you accept jinn possession, nothing carries any value anymore, because every single crime could be possessed. a murderer could just be possessed? How do you know? What makes you think possession must only be like catatonic schizophrenia? So when a person has, or Tourette's, they would just say this is a jinn. But if that's the case, what good does it? If a jinn is trying to damage humanity, what good does he get by just screwing up this person? Just making one person have schizophrenia. How does that ruin mankind? It doesn't. How does it ruin Islam? It doesn't. So people, these are all mental health issues. There is nothing, the Quran is clearly against this. The shaitan is saying, look, all I can do is just waswasa. I can just invite you to do something. You, فَلَا تَلُومُونِي. Look at this. He says, don't blame me, blame you. But if he had actual power, we can blame him. If I'm trying to do something physical, like imagine trying to leave this building, but somebody's actually holding me. They're actually physically holding me here. I can blame them. Like if I didn't get out in time, I can blame them. I can say, you know what, this is actually your fault. So if the shaitan is physically holding me and suppressing me to do something, I can blame him. But the Quran says, the shaitan is being clear that فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Blame yourselves. You accepted the invite. I just said, hey, why didn't you do this? You did it, not me. This completely ruins the message of Islam. There is zero will, irada. There is zero taklif, because you don't know who's possessed, who isn't. And if you say, well, no, if a person is possessed, then it becomes apparent because they look almost handicapped. You think, well, why? Why does a person have to look dumb or stupid when he's possessed? That might be just dumb and stupid jinn. How do you know that intelligent jinn won't be more intelligent than that? And because you don't know, you're not getting this from the Quran anyway. You're not getting this from the Sunnah. And he quoted, by the way, he goes on to explain Mu'awwadatayn, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. The Prophet used to use these to bless himself. Now, first of all, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas clearly mentions it's just yuwaswis. It's just whispers fi sudurin nas. And that too, where do these whispers come from? These invites. Minal jinnati wan nas. Even people whisper. But that's all these negative things can do, is just whisper. They can just invite you to it. It's up to you to accept. It's not in any way forced upon you. There is la ikraha fid din. This so goes against the Quran. It is so irresponsible to be pushing this kind of hocus pocus out there and just, being a part of that just because it serves other interests. Or if you believe in it, if a person believes in it, it honestly just reflects their poor understanding of Islam. That's all it does. I've quoted to you these people. They don't have a single, for a hadith. Now check this out. I'll tell you what they bring for a hadith. They bring the hadith that which Umar Sulaiman quoted, that the shaitan runs through the veins of the devil. This hadith is in Bukhari. Yeah. Now, read the full hadith. This is the hadith, and they won't deny it. This is the full hadith. The Prophet is walking with Safiya, his wife. She is covered up. Yeah. They walk past a group of companions who notice the Prophet with a woman as they're walking off. The Prophet comes back and he greets them and he says, hi, how are you doing? And he says to them, oh, by the way, I was just walking, I was with Safiya. That's Safiya. So they say to the Prophet that, we would never be doubting you. We wouldn't say something, we wouldn't say something that's inappropriate. In a way, they felt embarrassed that why is the Prophet justifying it to them? This is what they felt. I'm not saying the Prophet was justifying. He was just explaining that, oh, I'm with Safiya. Now, they felt that the Prophet was justifying it to them. So, oh, no, we wouldn't accuse you, or we wouldn't say anything bad about you. Oh my God, who was that woman with you? So the Prophet says, Inna shaytana yajri min ibn Adam majrat dam, that the shaitan, it runs in the veins of the son of Adam. Now, what do you understand from this hadith? Do you understand that, the son of Adam is possessed? That's absolutely stupid to understand that from this hadith. This hadith is clearly speaking about when people are suspicious wrongfully of other people, that you will have negative thoughts whether you like it or not. It is human. This hadith just means it is human to have negative thoughts. Don't be too harsh on yourselves, but don't act out on them. That's all the hadith means. This hadith in no shape or form means that the son of Adam is going to always be possessed by a devil. That is just stupid. And here is another hadith that is in Bukhari, which they so selectively ignore. You've got a hadith here that with the Prophet, that Ibn Abbas says, shall I not show you a woman from Ahlul Jannah, from the people of paradise? They say, of course. He says, this woman who was a particular black lady that was there, and he mentions that she came to the Prophet and she says, oh, I have Sara, I have this epilepsy, which they claim is all a jinn, by the way. In the hadith, she tells the Prophet, I have epilepsy, I have these epileptic fits. And when I do, I end up obviously, I become uncovered sometimes whilst I'm in a state of a fit. So she says that pray to God for me to cure me. And the Prophet says, if you wish, you could be patient and God will grant you an immense reward in the afterlife. And if you wish, I can pray for you. And she says, I will be patient then. And then she says, فقالت إني أتكشف أدعو الله لي لا أدعى لها. Right, so she says, I will be patient about the epilepsy, but just pray to God that I don't become uncovered with it, that's all. Now this hadith is in Bukhari. Now why is this hadith interesting? Well, it's interesting because if this was the devil, why is the Prophet telling her to be patient with the devil? That doesn't make any sense. Because the Prophet is saying, why don't you be patient with the devil? As in, the devil is doing this to you. Clearly not. The Prophet is saying to her, look, why do you, with your condition of epilepsy, if you're patient, Allah will give you an immense reward for your patience. So that is a hadith in Bukhari, which they all ignore, by the way. And every single hadith they bring, there's only a few hadith they bring, by the way. Nothing sahih. The first one they bring, which is the only one in Bukhari, which is it's only to do with suspicion and negative thoughts, nothing to do with jinn possession. The other hadith they bring is in Ibn Majah and in Al-Hakim about Uthman ibn Abil As, and that hadith is weak. It is clearly weak. It is a clearly da'if hadith. You will have, I was just checking if I had it here. I'll bring it up on the screen, actually. Yep, I have got it here, actually. Let me bring that up. So this is the hadith they bring. This is in Ibn Majah and it's in Al-Hakim. That hadith is transmitted. Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Ansari is in the chain, who Abu Dawood says became massively, he تغيرا شديدا, became utterly unreliable, his memory later on. Now, he's also mentioned in the Kamil of Ibn Adi. There is another narration to that, which, right, no, that's that narration. It's unacceptable. And even Imam Nawawi mentions that this Uthman ibn Abil As narration that they use, that he comes to the Prophet and he says, that this is, I feel these things, and the Prophet kind of hits his chest and kind of blows onto him and stuff like this. The more authentic narration which this seems to have come from is actually in Sahih Muslim, in which he's telling the Prophet that when he prays, he has difficulty remembering, and the Prophet tells him a particular dua and then pats him on the back, and he goes off saying that, after that day he felt much better with the words. It has no mention of any demons, no mention of possession, and Imam Nawawi mentions that that's actually the authentic narration to go with, not this. This is actually the weak one. Then they use another narration, which is to do with, you've got Ya'la ibn Murrah, a particular person who says, by the way, I witnessed something from the Prophet that nobody else witnessed. I had these 3 incidents. One of them was I was traveling with the Prophet, and there was some woman with a child, and eventually the child had some demon and the Prophet took it out. And he says, and this, by the way, nobody else ever witnessed this except me. That's enough to tell you that, shabash. Just think about it. Demons can afflict anyone, allegedly. Yet the Prophet never teaches it to everyone. Ya'la ibn Murrah, we've never heard of. And this narration, in this chain, you've got Abdurrahman ibn Abdul Aziz, who is problematic. You've got this narration by Manhal ibn Amr, who is considered da'if. And Ibn Hazm has said all of these are da'if. You've got Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, considered him da'if. So my point of saying this, people, is that there is nothing authentic to prove this hocus pocus. If you look at the Quran, it clearly shows you the shaitan is only capable of giving negative thoughts. It's up to you. You have willpower. That is the Quran. If you look at the Sunnah teaches that you have willpower. Right? These 1-2 narrations they bring are all problematic, da'if. They bring that popular one about negative thoughts and they try to blag it that it's to do with jinn possession. This is probably $1 billion industry. The amount of abuse that goes on, from physical to sexual abuse, the amount that goes on the back of this industry, it is drenched, it is submerged in abuse. And it's supported by all of these imams who are irresponsible enough to actually certify and rubber stamp it. To say, well, actually, demons do possess people. Why don't they possess normal people? Why don't they possess non-Muslims? You don't see them jumping around having epilepsy just because, why is the first world the way it is? I mean, if all these Muslims have jinns and everything, why don't they just, why ain't they in that position? And they seem to know how to unlock the jinn world. It's so stupid, the amount of nonsense that happens through all of this. I'm telling you, is nothing but a fraud. Beware of it. Do not allow, even these imams you get smiling and doing all this thing. It is nothing but BS. Okay, demons cannot possess. You see, it's interesting. I tell you something. Historically, the Mu'tazila, they were. By the way, people will say which scholars rejected this concept. I've quoted to you scholars. I've quoted to you Imam Shafi'i saying anybody who claims to have seen a jinn, we refuse to accept his testimony in Islam. Imam Tahawi saying that they cannot cause actual harm. Quoted Fakhruddin al-Razi. There's Ibn Hazm I quoted to you. There's Shawkani problematizes this. You've got Sheikh Shaltut, Sheikh Jad al-Haq, Ibn Ashur. You've got there's several, Sheikh Qaffal. You've got Baydawi. All of these scholars are Sunni scholars. They don't accept this stuff. Right, but yes, there was also a sect, the Mu'tazila. They never used to accept it. Now, what's interesting is there was never a Mu'tazili who was afflicted by a jinn. Who that had a jinn story then. And it's interesting that Jahid and all these people mention this. Say that, how come the Mu'tazila don't get the jinn? Because they don't believe in it. It's so stupid. And they just, this Jahid actually mentions an interesting story. He says that there's this lady who she goes to this particular, there's this Raqi. These Raqis are all chatting it. Honestly, they are, I would say the bulk of them are utterly fraudulent. right? Maybe some of them are sincere and just delusional. They seem to, but it is utterly a lie. The whole industry is all about making money, right? It is on the back. It has no legitimacy to it, right? You only can blame yourself for believing them, because if you're that stupid to believe that demons possess people and all they do is just make them go like this, catatonic schizophrenia for like years. The jinn's got nothing better to do, right? That is just, you can only blame your own stupidity, right? You have to have, for accepting that. But coming back to that story that Jahid says. So anyway, Jahid, he mentions this story that this lady, so she's not married, she has sex with someone, and so she's not a virgin. Now, she gets a proposal, but in that day and age as well, they were quite strict that the girl has to be a virgin. So she's like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? So she goes to this Jinn Baba, who says that, okay, I've got the solution for you. So he obviously takes some money from her, and then he calls her family and he says, look, she's possessed. I've done this test on her, and she's possessed. And they go, oh really? Damn, we need to, please take the jinn out. Please do that. We'll pay you and we'll give all this money. So, okay, he says, well, okay, I can, but, this is a powerful jinn. So they go, oh, please. He says the problem is the jinn, wherever it will exit the body, it will cause some harm. So he says, I've got to make it come out of some cavity. So he says, if I bring it out the mouth, if I pull it out the mouth, it will probably break all her teeth. If I pull it through the eye, it will damage the eye. He says, I could pull it out from her vagina. He says, I could bring it out from there. Yeah, jinn. You naughty. Where does the jinn reside? He's residing. I mean, we know that since, we know that's where men are trying to get into, but jinn as well. Ay, haramio. So anyway, he says that, I could pull the jinn out from the vagina, but if I do that, then it means that it will kind of, obviously, as it exits, it will ruin her hymen, her virginity. So they go, let's go with that option. That's like the easiest. So eventually Jahid writes that that's the option they chose. So he goes, yeah, okay, I'm doing the hocus pocus, powering me. And then it's like, oh, well, she's lost her virginity. And then basically it was happy families after that. So this is the kind of nonsense, people. And I was very disappointed to see Sheikh Omar Suleiman promoting this kind of nonsense. But then it is what it is, isn't it? With cha-ching, where the market is, it supports that. And I tell you, these people I'm asking, you know what? I will accept from any of these sheikhs, if they want a dialogue, if they want to debate on it, Ajao, come on my mind trap, any of them, the sheikhs, on this topic. Challenge! This is a challenge, the challenge. I offer the challenge. They cannot prove it. It is utterly against the Quran, utterly against the Sunnah, right? So I remember years ago, I've had several debates with people on this. People thinking that they're gonna run rings, but this ring no easy, this one not easy, So anyway, Sheikh Omar Suleiman as well. Sheikh. You know what? Look, I like Omar Suleiman, but I'm being honest with you. I say this about people, and people probably thinking, Mufti, why are you being a hater? I'm not being a hater. I'm just being honest. The truth is, people like Sheikh Omar Suleiman are not really that educated as shuyukh. They're not actually trained as scholars in Islam. They just get that title like they do. They probably like, you have a status like khatib, like a preacher status, where you've done a certain amount, like you've studied Islam, let's say for about 2 years, you've done a few things, learnt a few hadith, you can preach and give nice sermons. And yeah, that's the kind of status of people like Sheikh Umar Suleiman. Now, I'm not saying that to hate on him. I'm saying, look, he's done great work in human rights in America. He's kind of protested. He's kind of shown that Islam cares about civil rights. And I think that's amazing. But in Islam, he is significantly undertrained. He is not trained to be giving rulings on like fatwa. He would not be trained. He would not. I don't mean this in a rude way, but he wouldn't even be familiar with what books of fatwa are. He would not even know their names. He's not trained like, he's not been to an Islamic institute. And you'll find that with many of these imams. They're not actually trained. They've just got a status. He has done some amazing things on the civil rights and social justice and stuff like that, and I commend that. But it doesn't mean because he stands up for, let's say, human rights, or that means he's an expert on hadith or he's an expert on the Quran. He's not at all. And so you have to be wary, people. I know when you look at me, you obviously see, he's saying, look at this guy, look, just look at him, just look at the way he's dressed, look at his bloody necklace and his earring, and this guy, what could he know? But when I pull rank, see, the irony is, out of all of these, I'm the only one who's actually trained. Because I mean, there are other scholars as well who are trained, but what I'm saying is many of these people are not actually trained as scholars, and they're definitely not muftis. So yeah, but anyway, moving on. So that was Sheikh Umar Suleiman's arguments presented were, in essence, they were a bit like this.
Agora vai. Aí, quebrando o chifre.
That's how they actually were. But so cool, people. I just wanted to put that out there. Right, let's I don't know what those questions are. Something about the CIA. I've got no idea what the hell you're writing about. Danny boy! What is Danny boy saying? That was basically the arguments. Right, I think we got to wrap this up, people. There was a quick one I'll mention. That, you see, some of these people. Now, people may say I should not be on social media. To which I would say, it's not your dad's internet, but there's reasons why some imams, you see, they don't understand the culture of their audience, especially sometimes from the Muslim world. I say Sheikh, I don't really accept him as a Sheikh, but he obviously he has some knowledge. I'm not saying he's not like a common person. Like, he definitely has read certain books and things like, and he presents himself as a Sheikh Hassan Katani. Now, he is from a household of many shuyukh. Like, so it's a huge family in North Africa, in Morocco specifically, that for decades, if not maybe a couple of centuries, have had great scholars, great muhaddithin, great people who memorize absolute hadith and all of this. Fast forward to the current day and age, there still are several amongst that whole, because it's a huge family within Morocco, the Katani family, involved in politics, involved in all kinds of things. But you've got amongst them these two, there's two brothers in this particular family. You've got Hamza Katani and Hassan Katani. Now, Hamza Katani is different. He is quite Sufi inclined, um, and I feel and definitely more learned as well. And then you've got Hassan Katani, who is not really that learned, a bit more. When I say that learned, as in like proper, the way you expect from the Arab world, you expect like, because when you're looking at that world, you're expecting a different level of caliber. So he's not on that level, but he's obviously like of an ustad status. He has gone through a certain amount of things and certain amount of learning. He is coming from more a Salafi background, a Wahhabi kind of perspective. He seems to have, in the last maybe decade or so, or less than a decade, but seems to have embraced the Maliki madhab, seems to have taught that, and really used that as a tool to kind of, I suppose, teach people in Europe, teach people in America, and he teaches online. But chalo, there's no whatever, if people want to teach, they want to do things, up to them. Really, it's nobody else's business, and I've got nothing against that. Now, here is a clip, however, where he's speaking on certain issues, and it gets into racism. I don't know if you guys can hear this.
She is an old woman or black.
It says if she's an old black or older black woman.
People don't pay attention to her. But if she's a very beautiful black, that means dark-skinned woman. We don't say that she's allowed to be uncovered near people. He's talking about maybe maids or slaves in the days of slavery or stuff like that. But even dark-skinned people, near dark-skinned people, they desire each other. And there are dark-skinned women that are very beautiful to other people. So that's not actually...
Actually, when you go back and see, do these people really believe in freedom of speech?
This part is about freedom of speech in the West.
That is only a big fat lie. That is a big lie. Why? Because they are not allowed to discriminate homosexuality.
So there's no freedom of speech.
If you speak about homosexuality, you will go to jail in Europe, in the West. Therefore, there's no freedom of speech. If you speak about the Negroes, between brackets, or the black guys, and discriminate them and say that they are so-and-so, or make fun of them, you will go to jail.
What the hell is that?
If you speak about the Jews...
What the hell was that? What the hell was that? I mean, the first part, the homosexual part, I thought, okay, well, you can understand culturally in the Arab world or in the Muslim world or in other countries, there's strong homophobia. So if you speak against homosexuality, you can go to jail. They're trying to say you haven't got freedom of speech. So, okay, you can, see the angle he's coming from. At least you can, whether you agree with it or not, but you can understand, okay, he's trying to come from this angle. Because he would clearly condemn and speak against constantly homosexuality. So he's saying, well, you can't do that in the West, so where's your freedom of speech? But then he's like, well, if you're to speak about the Negro, you're thinking, what? What the hell is he on about? What the hell? It's not a laughing matter. What the hell is this guy on about? Seriously. This is a prime example of why when we speak of ulama in the West, scholars, Islamic scholars in the West, we need people who are indigenous to this culture, who understand. Now, whether he meant something else, and that's just because his English is poor, I don't know. On the first clip, where he's speaking about a text about certain women that need to cover up, and he says, well, an old woman doesn't need to cover up, or a black woman doesn't need to cover up. And then he says, well, look, this, sometimes there are some black women who can be beautiful to black people. And you think, He's making it worse. What the hell is he even saying? Like, that's so stupid. What the hell is that? You know, it's like, I think they can't help it. The anti-blackness so pours out of them. It's like, what does that even, whoa, wait a minute. What does that even mean? That there's some dark-skinned people that I'm sure they are attractive to some other dark-skinned people. It's like, what? This guy actually, does he actually know what he's saying? For God's sake. Honestly, and this is the problem. That you see, this is why we have to be wary sometimes when we are, like, obviously there are many scholars in, obviously, the Muslim world, and sure, by all means, benefit from them. But be wary. Don't blindly follow these people. And if they say something dumb and stupid, recognize it as dumb and stupid. Right? So don't be like, now he was saying, oh, but I'm reading this in some classical book. Now you have to understand, look, in the olden books, in the the golden books, right? So in the old classical texts, you may find elements which are like, you may find certain points that are utterly absurd. You may find anti-blackness in certain texts. There are certain fatwa where you will find this, where people will say things like what he's reading, this text of like Sheikh Sidi Ahmed Zarruq, or from the earlier scholars, where they will say, oh, well, if it's a black woman, she doesn't need to cover up properly, she doesn't need to do the hijab because people ain't that interested in her. Now, you see, when you read things like this, the truth of the fact is that, look, those people, those scholars, right, are a product of the environment. The environment was wrong, okay? It had discrimination in it. Maybe I don't believe that those people were going around being cruel to people that were black and things like, maybe some were, but I don't believe those scholars were and things like that. But they had these views without even understanding anything bad about them, because to them, 700 years ago, this is what the world was. So I'm not talking about trying to get that scholar and everybody demonize him, because the scholar lived 700 years ago. People 700 years ago may have had these views, but they felt that that's the way the world was. But we can recognize the view today as wrong. We can say, look, that view is wrong. Okay, it's racist. It is unacceptable, but look, somebody said it 800 years ago. That's how they viewed the world. It's not about trying to make that person a villain, because that person wasn't, he was just speaking how his day and age spoke. So, okay, he may have generally been a very intelligent and normal and absolutely a civil human being. So I'm not speaking about boycotting scholars. Obviously, I love our legacy generally, the whole fiqh legacy, but it doesn't mean these people were perfect. They had blemishes, they had cultural biases, so when we see something that's wrong, just acknowledge it. Say that, look, that's wrong, fine. But otherwise, the scholar, in other things, you can take it. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to kind of defend a stupidity that's like racist, and then to justify it in that way, where he's saying, look, that's just making it worse. That, look, there are some dark-skinned people that I'm sure some dark-skinned people must find them attractive. Kutto wali besti kar raha hai. It's like the guy is like, what the hell is he on about? Like, that's so bang out of order saying that. Because, but maybe English is the, he doesn't understand what he's saying, but that just comes back to prove the point. We need to have indigenous scholars who understand the culture. People, with that, we're going to wrap this up. Right, that once again was his explanation, people, This is the kind of, this is what he probably thought. You know, I've killed it with that response. He probably thought, you know what, you're right. The text was problematic, but my explanation just killed it. That, you know, obviously there's going to be some dark skinned people that will find that dark skinned woman attractive. He probably felt like doing this after it. He's like, I've just killed it. This is me. I've just like, poof, it's celebrating time now. Oh, wow. Anyway, people, I'm going to wrap this up. Take very good care of yourselves wherever you are. Much love. If you haven't already tuned in, I mean, if you haven't, see, look at that. I'm like, it's been a long day. If you haven't already subscribed, click the notification bell. Then, yeah, what on earth are you waiting for? People, we need to get it to 20K so I can do this. I can do this. 20K subscribers. Let's do that, people. I can't believe it. We need to be, all of us, doing this kind of dance. There it is, people. We need to be doing that. So, guys, much love as always. If you need to reach out to me, you can do on Instagram, Facebook as well. Patreon, people, you can reach out on Patreon if you haven't already. Allah, Allah, Allah. To all my Patreoncitos, all my Patreon supporters, mwah. Special love to all of you. Guys, over and out. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.